What I'm about to tell you is going to completely change the way you think about high blood pressure, because the real cause is probably not what you've been blaming all these years. Most people think it's salt, some think it's stress, others think it's just old age and there's nothing they can do about it. But that belief is exactly why so many Americans over 60 keep watching their numbers climb while doing what they think are all the right things. And if you stay with me, I'm going to show you why your blood pressure may be high, what is actually driving it, and, how to start fixing it. Here's what makes this so dangerous. High blood pressure usually doesn't scream. It whispers. It doesn't knock you to the floor with pain. It quietly strains your arteries, your heart, your brain, your kidneys, and even your memory for years before you realize what's happening. And by the time many people finally take it seriously, damage has already been building in the background. That's why this video matters so much, because when you understand the real cause, you stop fighting the wrong enemy. And when you stop fighting the wrong enemy, you finally start making progress that actually shows up on the monitor. I'm Dr. Michael Joel, and before we go one step further, I need a small favor from you, because it truly matters. Please subscribe today so you never miss simple, life-saving heart guidance designed to keep you stronger, safer, calmer, and independent. Thank you. Now let's get into this, because the truth about high blood pressure is both more serious and more hopeful than most people realize. It's more serious because the process usually begins long before symptoms, but it's also more hopeful because once you understand what's really happening inside your body, so many of the fixes suddenly start making sense. Let me simplify blood pressure in the clearest way possible. Your heart is the pump, your arteries are the hoses, your kidneys are the fluid managers, and your hormones and nervous system are the pressure controls. When all of that works together smoothly, blood moves through your body with the right amount of force. But when the arteries get stiff, when the kidneys hold on to too much salt and water, and when the body stays stuck in a state of internal tension, the pressure rises. That is the real story. Not one villain, not one bad meal. A whole pressure system slowly getting pushed in the wrong direction, and that brings us to the real cause of high blood pressure. It is not simply the salt shaker on your table. It is not just stress. It is not just aging. The real cause is that your pressure control system has been pushed into overload. Your blood vessels become less flexible. Your body may retain extra fluid. Your nervous system may stay too activated. Your kidneys may struggle to keep the balance where it belongs. And all of that forces your heart to push against more resistance day after day. Once that begins, the number on the screen is not the problem itself. It's the alarm bell, warning you that the system is under strain. Let me tell you about Carol from Columbus, Ohio, because her story explains this better than any textbook ever could. Carol was 71, retired, careful, organized, and convinced her blood pressure problem came from one thing only: getting older. She didn't smoke. She didn't add much salt at the table. She took her medication most days. But over 3 years, her numbers kept drifting upward. 132/82, then 138/86, then 146/90. She was frustrated. Because she felt like nothing obvious had changed, but something had changed. Her body's pressure system had changed, slowly enough that she never noticed it happening. This is what aging does, and I need you to understand it clearly because it explains so much. As we get older, blood vessels naturally tend to thicken and stiffen. That means they don't expand as easily when blood moves through them. Imagine trying to push water through a garden hose that has become hard, narrow, and less flexible over the years. The pump has to work harder. Pressure rises. That's why older adults are more vulnerable, even when they think their habits haven't changed much. Age alone doesn't doom you, but it does change the playing field. And when age is combined with other hidden drivers, that's when the numbers often begin to climb fast. Now here's the first hidden driver, and it's a massive one in the United States: sodium, but not in the simple way most people think. People imagine high blood pressure comes from sprinkling salt on eggs or mashed potatoes. That's not usually the main issue. The bigger problem is hidden sodium packed into canned soup, deli meat, frozen dinners, crackers, bread, bottled sauces, and restaurant food. And some people, especially older adults, Black Americans, people with diabetes, or those with kidney disease, are more salt-sensitive than others, so the same meal that barely affects one person may push someone else's pressure up sharply, for hours. That's exactly what happened to Bill in Tampa, Florida. Bill was 76 and proud of one thing. He had stopped using the salt shaker completely, so he could not understand why his blood pressure kept reading 154/88. He told me, "Doctor, I don't even salt my food anymore." And he meant it. But when we went through a normal day of eating, here's what we found. Breakfast was canned tomato juice and toast. Lunch was turkey slices on bread with pickles. Dinner was a frozen chicken pot pie. Evening snack, was crackers and cheese. No salt shaker, sure, but the sodium load hiding in that day was enormous. And his body was hanging on to it. Here's why sodium matters so much. Too much sodium pulls more water into your bloodstream. More fluid inside the blood vessels means more volume. More volume means more pressure pushing on the vessel walls. And there's another part almost nobody talks about enough. Potassium helps your body get rid of sodium in the urine, and it also helps blood vessel walls relax. So when someone eats too much sodium and too little potassium at the same time, the pressure system gets squeezed from both ends, fluid rises, vessel tension rises, and blood pressure rises with it. That's why the real issue is not just salt, it's imbalance. And imbalance is what many American diets create every single day. Let me tell you about Nancy in Des Moines, Iowa, because her case revealed that imbalance beautifully. Nancy was 69 and did something many seniors do when they're trying to be practical. She bought foods that lasted: boxed cereal, canned vegetables, soup, packaged deli turkey, instant oatmeal cups, and frozen entrees. It was affordable, easy, and she thought it was responsible. But fresh produce had slowly disappeared from her routine. Very little spinach, very few beans, hardly any berries, bananas, potatoes, yogurt, or oranges. So her body was getting a steady flood of sodium without enough potassium to help counter it. When we changed that pattern, her numbers began to shift within weeks. Now let's move to the second major driver, and this one is deeply misunderstood: excess weight, especially around the abdomen. I'm not talking about appearance. I'm not talking about vanity. I'm talking about pressure physiology. Extra body fat can make the body more insulin resistant, more inflamed, more likely to retain sodium, and more likely to activate hormones that raise blood pressure. It can also worsen sleep apnea, which we'll talk about in a moment. So when someone says, "I'm only a little heavier than I used to be," that can still matter, because even modest weight gain, can shift the entire pressure control system in the wrong direction over time. Frank from Tulsa, Oklahoma, learned this the hard way. He was 73, broad-shouldered, active in his younger years, and never considered himself obese. But after retirement, his routine changed. More television, less walking, more restaurant lunches, fewer errands on foot. Over about 6 years, he gained 18 pounds, mostly around the middle. His blood pressure, followed right behind it. What shocked him was not that his numbers improved after a major transformation. It was that they improved after a modest one. He lost just under 10 pounds, started walking daily, cleaned up his meals, and his systolic pressure dropped enough that we had to rethink his medication plan. That's how powerful even a small change can be. When the cause is systemic strain, and that brings us to inactivity, which is not just about burning calories, it's about what movement does to your arteries. Regular physical activity helps blood vessels stay more flexible. It improves how the body handles insulin. It supports healthier weight. It helps the nervous system calm down. It can improve sleep. It helps the heart pump more efficiently. So when movement disappears, the body loses all of those benefits at the same time. The problem isn't simply not exercising. The problem is that inactivity quietly removes one of the most powerful pressure-lowering signals your body has. And yes, that matters even if you're in your 60s, 70s, or 80s. Especially then, because the vessels need that signal. Gloria from Phoenix, Arizona, showed me this in the most encouraging way. She was 78 and had decided exercise was no longer realistic for her because she didn't feel safe walking outside in the summer heat. So she stopped trying. Her numbers edged upward. Her stamina fell. She assumed that was just normal aging, and she began to accept it. But it wasn't just aging. It was deconditioning. We started with 10 minutes of indoor walking, twice a day, holding a sturdy kitchen counter when needed. Then she added gentle chair squats and marching in place during commercials. Nothing dramatic, nothing athletic. But within 2 months, her blood pressure, balance, and energy all improved. The body responds to movement even when it's small. Now, I need to show you one of the most overlooked causes of rising blood pressure in older Americans, because this one fools thousands of people every year. Poor sleep, and especially sleep apnea. If you snore loudly, wake up tired, doze in the afternoon, or your spouse says you stop breathing at night, do not ignore that. Sleep apnea repeatedly drops oxygen levels and jolts the body into a stress response while you're asleep. Your heart rate changes, your nervous system fires, your blood vessels stay under strain. So even if you think, well, I'm asleep, my body should be resting, it may actually be spending the whole night fighting for air, and your blood pressure pays the price. Ronald from St. Louis, Missouri, was 72 and utterly convinced his blood pressure problem had nothing to do with sleep because he slept 8 hours every night, or at least he thought he did. His wife told a different story: loud snoring, pauses in breathing, gasping, morning headaches, dry mouth, afternoon naps in his recliner that were getting longer and longer. His blood pressure had become stubborn, hard to control, and, oddly higher in the mornings. Once we addressed his sleep apnea, the change was remarkable. Not overnight, but real. Better sleep reduced the nighttime stress on his body, and his pressure started responding more normally. That's the key lesson. Hours in bed do not always equal restorative sleep, especially when breathing is impaired. Before I go further, I need to tell you about a culprit that blindsides people because it often comes in a bottle from the drugstore. Certain medications can raise blood pressure. I'm talking about common things people in the United States use every day without thinking twice. Decongestants for colds, some pain relievers like NSAIDs, some antidepressants, and other medicines that can make pressure harder to control. I'm not saying stop anything on your own. Please don't do that. But I am saying that if your numbers suddenly rise and you cannot figure out why, the answer may be sitting in your medicine cabinet rather than on your dinner plate, and that possibility must be reviewed. Susan from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, was 67 and had beautifully controlled blood pressure for years. Then one winter, her numbers surged. 158/92, then 162/94. She panicked. She thought her medication had failed. She thought she might be headed for a stroke. But when we reviewed her routine, there it was. She had been taking an over-the-counter cold medicine for sinus congestion and using ibuprofen almost daily for knee pain after shoveling light snow from the driveway. That combination, was enough to push her system upward. Once her physician helped her switch to safer options, the numbers settled back down. Imagine how many people are blamed for non-compliance when the real cause is, a bottle they bought at the pharmacy. And then there's alcohol, another factor people routinely underestimate. I hear this all the time. Doctor, I only drink a little. But little has a way of becoming regular, and regular has a way of affecting sleep, weight, hydration, heart rhythm, and blood pressure all at once. A nightly routine of wine, bourbon, or cocktails may feel relaxing in the moment, but for some people it becomes part of the pressure problem, especially if it leads to poorer sleep, more snacking, or missed medication timing. This is not about moralizing, it's about physiology. If pressure is climbing and alcohol is part of the daily pattern, you cannot pretend those two things have nothing to do with each other, because often they do. Now let's talk about stress, but in the right way. Stress alone is usually not the entire cause of chronic high blood pressure. However, long-term stress absolutely helps keep the system activated. It can drive poor sleep, emotional eating, less movement, more alcohol, higher heart rate, tighter blood vessels, and inconsistent routines. In other words, stress is not always the whole fire, but it often pours gasoline on it. And for older adults dealing with caregiving, grief, finances, loneliness, or constant news consumption, that matters a lot. Because when the body never gets a true sense of safety, it stays on guard. And a guarded body is a body that often holds pressure higher than it should, for longer than it should. Elaine from Louisville, Kentucky, taught me that lesson in a way I'll never forget. She was 74 and caring for her husband with memory problems. She was sleeping lightly, skipping meals, living on coffee until noon, and keeping the television news on nearly all day because she was scared of missing an emergency. Her blood pressure had been acceptable for years, then suddenly it wasn't. She thought she needed stronger medication, and maybe she did eventually. But medicine wasn't the only issue. Her body was living in a constant stress signal. Once her family stepped in, once her routine became calmer, once she started breathing exercises and short walks again, her readings stopped swinging so wildly. Her pressure wasn't just chemical, it was also environmental. But now we need to talk about the organ that sits at the center of this whole story, the kidneys. Your kidneys help regulate fluid, sodium, and blood pressure. When they're healthy, they help keep balance. When they're damaged, blood pressure often rises. And here's the cruel part. High blood pressure can damage the kidneys, and damaged kidneys can push blood pressure even higher. It becomes a vicious cycle. So if your numbers are rising and nobody has checked your kidney function recently, that matters. If you've been told you have chronic kidney disease, that matters even more. Because sometimes, the reason pressure keeps climbing is not lack of effort. It's that the body's fluid control system is struggling, and it needs medical attention. Thomas from Cleveland, Ohio was 75 and doing almost everything right. He took his medicines. He walked, he didn't smoke, he watched his diet better than most people. Yet his blood pressure became harder and harder to control. He felt discouraged, like he was failing some kind of invisible test. But the problem wasn't failure. The problem was that mild kidney disease had begun to interfere with his body's ability to manage fluid balance the way it used to. Once that was identified, his treatment plan changed. And that's why I'm so passionate about this topic, because when people don't understand the real cause, they blame themselves. They think, I must be doing everything wrong, when often the truth is far more specific and far more treatable, than that. Now maybe you're asking the most important question of all. If this process is happening, why don't I feel it? Why don't I feel my arteries stiffening? Why don't I feel my kidneys straining? Why don't I feel pressure building in my vessels? Because high blood pressure is often silent until it has been there long enough to create consequences. That's what makes it so dangerous. You may feel perfectly normal while the pressure continues to wear down delicate tissues in the heart, brain, eyes, and kidneys. So if you've been waiting for a symptom to tell you whether you should worry, please stop waiting. The number matters precisely because the warning usually comes before the feeling, not after it. So how do you fix it? This is the hopeful part, and I want you to hear me carefully. You do not fix high blood pressure by chasing one magic food, one supplement, one trick, or one temporary cleanse. You fix it by lowering the strain inside that pressure control system. You reduce the fluid overload. You help the blood vessels relax. You improve the body's ability to regulate itself. And you identify hidden causes that are pushing things higher. That is the roadmap. It is practical, it is grounded in physiology, and it works. But the fix only works if you're honest about what's driving your numbers. Because if the cause is sleep apnea and you only blame salt, you'll miss it. If the cause is kidney strain and you only blame stress, you'll miss it too. The first step is measurement, because if your readings are sloppy, everything that follows becomes guesswork. Measure at the same times each day, ideally morning and evening. Sit quietly for 5 minutes first, feet flat on the floor, back supported, arms supported at heart level. Don't talk. Don't check right after climbing stairs, arguing, or rushing around the kitchen. And please, keep a written log or a simple phone note. One of the biggest tragedies in blood pressure care is that people make big treatment decisions based on bad readings or fuzzy memory. Accurate numbers reveal patterns, patterns reveal causes, and causes lead to the right fix, instead of a panicked reaction to random highs. The second step is a sodium audit, and I mean a real one. Not, I don't use much table salt. I mean looking at labels and asking where the sodium is actually coming from. Bread, soup, cheese, bacon, ham, sausage, salad dressing, canned beans without rinsing, frozen meals. Restaurant food, Chinese takeout, pizza, sandwiches, crackers, condiments. In the American diet, that's where sodium hides. So if you want lower pressure, start there. Don't begin with perfection. Begin with awareness. Pick the worst offenders in your normal week and replace them first. That is how people make sustainable progress. Not with fear, and not with punishment. With a clear-eyed look at where the pressure is being fed, one choice at a time. The third step is building meals around the DASH pattern, even if you never memorize the name. Think of it this way: more vegetables, more fruit, more beans, more oats, more plain yogurt, more nuts if your doctor says they fit your needs, more fish or skinless poultry, more whole grains, less processed meat, less sugary drink, less fast food, less packaged convenience food, less sodium-heavy restaurant food. It is not glamorous, but it is powerful, because it gives your body potassium, fiber, protein, and minerals, while cutting back on the foods that help trap fluid and stiffen vessels. And when people do this consistently, the body often responds more than they expect, sometimes within weeks. Now let's talk specifically about potassium, because this is where nuance matters. Potassium helps your body balance sodium and helps blood vessel walls relax. That's why foods like beans, potatoes, spinach, yogurt, oranges, bananas, tomatoes, and sweet potatoes can support healthier pressure. But, and this is critical, not everyone should suddenly load up on potassium supplements or salt substitutes. If you have kidney disease, if you take certain medications, or if your doctor has ever warned you about potassium, you need guidance first. Food-based improvement is often the safest place to begin. But even healthy foods need context when kidneys are involved. So yes, potassium can help. But it has to fit your specific medical picture, not somebody else's advice on the internet. The fourth step is movement, and I want to make this as practical as possible for older adults. You do not need to become a runner. You do not need to join an expensive gym. You do not need to push until you hurt. What you need is regularity, brisk walking if you can, indoor walking if weather is bad, light stationary biking, water exercise, gentle strength work, marching in place, chair exercises. Even replacing periods of sitting with movement helps. The point is not athletic performance. The point is sending your body the message that it still needs flexible vessels, better circulation, and calmer pressure signals. That message has to be repeated often enough for the body to believe it and to respond. The fifth step is weight reduction if you are carrying extra weight, but I need to say this compassionately because shame helps no one. You do not need to become thin to help your blood pressure. Even a modest loss can matter. Around 5% of body weight can make a meaningful difference for many people. That means the goal is not some impossible version of yourself from 1978. The goal is taking pressure off the system now. A few pounds less fluid retention, a few pounds less abdominal strain, a few pounds less sleep disruption, a few pounds less insulin resistance. That can be enough to move the needle, and once people see that, they stop feeling hopeless. They realize improvement is not all or nothing, and that changes everything. The sixth step is sleep, and for many people, this is the missing piece. Set a consistent bedtime if you can. Reduce late-night television and screens. Limit alcohol close to bedtime. Avoid heavy meals right before sleep. And if you snore loudly, wake with headaches, feel exhausted after supposedly full nights, or if anyone has ever told you that you stop breathing in your sleep, please get evaluated. I cannot emphasize this strongly enough. Sleep apnea is not just snoring. It is a blood pressure issue, a heart issue, a brain issue, and when it goes untreated, people often feel like their medication just stopped working. Sometimes the medication didn't fail at all. The sleep did. And no one noticed. The seventh step is reviewing every medication and supplement with your doctor or pharmacist. Not eventually, not someday, soon. Bring the bottles. Bring the cold medicine. Bring the pain relievers. Bring the energy products. Bring the herbal supplements. Bring the sleep aids. Bring everything. Because the number of people unknowingly pushing their pressure upward with products they assume are harmless is far greater than most realize. And no, this does not mean all those products are bad. It means they need context. If something raises blood pressure and you already have hypertension, that matters. Hidden causes are often hiding in plain sight, and once you identify them, treatment gets smarter very quickly, instead of simply getting stronger. The eighth step is reducing alcohol and getting serious about smoking if it applies to you. Smoking raises blood pressure and damages blood vessels. Alcohol can worsen blood pressure directly and indirectly through weight, sleep, and routine disruption. Again, this is not a lecture. This is about removing load from an already strained system. When pressure is high, every aggravating factor matters more than it used to. So if you've been telling yourself, well, I've always had my evening drinks, or, at my age, what difference does it make? I need you to challenge that thought. Because your blood vessels do not care how long a habit has been around. They respond to what you do now. And now is still powerful. Even late in life. The ninth step is calming the nervous system on purpose, not by hoping life becomes stress-free because it won't, but by deliberately inserting moments of recovery into the day. Slow breathing, quiet prayer, gentle stretching, sitting outside without the television blaring, short walks after meals, less doom scrolling, less angry news exposure right before measuring blood pressure, more calm, more rhythm, more pauses. People underestimate how much their bodies need signals of safety. When those signals are missing, the system stays tense, and a tense system tends to hold pressure high. You cannot always control the world around you, but you can create more calm inside your day, and your blood vessels notice that.